Welcome to the Sustainable Soul Podcast with me, Christine Martin. I am a group fitness instructor and gym manager who has also struggled with eating disorders and finding joyful, meaningful movement that fits into your life rather than takes away from it. I'm here to talk about all things holistic health and wellness, how to joyfully move our bodies in a place that comes from love rather than hate, and to just create a safe space for this community. I hope you enjoy the show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Sustainable Soul Podcast. Happy Monday to you, and happy beginning of your week, or if it's the middle of the week for you, late listeners, happy day to you, as always. You deserve it. I hope you're having a fantastic day. For me, just like usual, it's morning. It's almost 8 o'clock, and I'm so excited to be chatting today. Today's going to be very much just a chatty one. I think it might be a shorter episode. I'm basically just talking about one topic, and it's something that I'm very passionate about, and that is that we should never comment on anyone's bodies ever. Might be a hot take, and especially for some people I've been around, it's a very hot take, but I'm going to explain why I think we shouldn't be commenting on other people's bodies, talking about comparison and how we don't know what other people are struggling with. And then I'm going to offer some tips to steer the conversation away from our bodies. But before we get into all that, let's get started on life updates, rosebud thorns. My life updates, I wrote them down today. First one is I am in a long distance relationship for the next couple weeks. I know I'm being dramatic, but my boyfriend travels a lot for work, and he's gone for like 2.5 weeks. So it's always a little bit of an interesting transition for me when he's gone for like longer than a week, because it's like finding independence, but also trying to like keep up my relationship with him. But it's like not a fully long distance relationship, obviously. Like, it's only 2 weeks. It's not a huge deal, and I understand that. But it's also like it's like a midway point where it's not quite having to do all the steps that you have to take when you are in a long distance relationship, but it's also like having to do it a little bit for the next 2 weeks. So that's something I'm thinking about in my head a little bit. Also, my computer became unplugged, so I'm going to go plug it in. BRB. Okay, I'm back. My computer life is so bad. I'll charge it for like 3 days straight, and then I turn it on and it dies. So just want to make sure I don't lose anything like last week. Last week there was a lot of technical difficulties. If you watch the YouTube video, the camera I was using, I have this nice camera. I'm just on my phone right now because I just didn't want to deal with this again, but it basically stopped recording every like 11 minutes, and I didn't realize that was happening. And so, or I did, but I didn't realize at what point it was happening. Like, the camera would shut off, and I thought that's when it stopped recording, but it had stopped recording like 30 seconds before that each time. So that's why if you watch the YouTube video, there's like little blank spaces in the video because my camera stopped. So I need to look into that, figure that out. But also, my audio, like my computer recording, also stopped near the end. So I'm glad I was filming, because the last like 7 minutes were lost from my microphone, but I had them on camera. So it all worked out, but I'm definitely trying to be a little more foolproof today. Other life updates, I've been doing Pilates. I get to go to Reformer Pilates at work, and so I've been doing that, and it's honestly life-changing. I've only done it like 3 times, but it's really lengthening me out, and I just feel so much more stretched, and I've been loving slowing down a little bit. But on another note, I haven't gone to SoulCycle in weeks, and I miss it. It just hasn't like aligned with my schedule, but I just bought one, so hopefully I'll be able to go soon. But yeah, those are kind of my life updates. That's all I really had. But let's talk about Rosebud Thorn of the week. My rose of this week. Oh my gosh, I had such a fun cycling class last Thursday. I did a summer ride. At the last class of the month, I always do like a themed ride. This month I'm doing Pride Ride, which I'm so excited about. But last week it was summer summer anthem, summer ride, and it was just such a good energy. I love teaching cycling. It's been something that I've been feeling super happy about. So that was my rose. And then my bud is I made my list of intentions because I was on my menstrual phase in my menstrual phase. Tune into last week's episode if you want to hear more about that. But I set some intentions. So I've been going with those intentions, trying to be a little bit more creative, trying to not be so hard on myself. And yeah, it's been great. So that's my bud is I'm still kind of working on those for the month. And then my thorn is that my knee has been hurting. I've been upping my mileage running and like I kind of live a high impact life with the job that I have. So I definitely may have overused my knee a little bit and it's been bugging me. So I'm going to try to take it easy for the next few days, but I'm a little worried about it. So that's my thorn, but hopefully that's the last update you'll hear about it because hopefully it'll just get all better. And yeah, let's get into the episode. So, like I said, the thesis of this episode is that I believe we should never comment on other people's bodies ever. I believe there's no time or place for it about how someone's body looks. So the inspiration for this post, for some reason, all of the creators I follow are pregnant right now. I guess it just makes sense. Like I've always followed people who are like a few years older than me, and so they're just like in that stage. But particularly the What We Said Girl is my favorite podcast ever. They're both, or one of them's pregnant right now, and the other one just gave birth. But they were talking a lot about body image being pregnant and people making comments about their weights or like the idea of people asking, it's literally sends a shiver down my spine, asking if someone's pregnant when they don't know. Like, are you dumb? I'm sorry. Do not ask someone if they're pregnant if you don't know them and you're not 100% sure. Like, who cares? But anyway, so they've been talking a lot about that and it just made me remember all of the like, oh, and they were talking about how when women are pregnant, they feel like people comment on like their bumps and they're like, oh, your bump is so big. Like people want pregnant people to only carry weight in their belly, but it's like you can also gain weight other places when you're pregnant. And that's like kind of demonized versus like it's celebrated when it's like a really tiny girl with like a big bump. Like it's so cute, all that stuff. So it just was making me think, but then I was thinking about life in general and how I think commenting on anyone's body ever is just not necessary in any context. So the main point is that we just never know what people are going through. Even if you make a comment that wouldn't offend you, like let's say you are trying to lose weight and you're like, oh my gosh, I wish someone would tell me that I look skinny or someone would tell me that all this weight I lost is good. But even if that comment wouldn't offend you or you think it wouldn't affect you, it could offend someone else. Everybody has body insecurity, which is a bigger issue in itself, but everyone has things that they're insecure about and you never know what that is. Like some people would love to gain weight and their bodies can't do that. So if you call them skinny, that's an insult. Even though society has made us think that like smaller is better and bigger is worse, which is not true. All bodies are good bodies, and some people live healthier and happier at a bigger weight, and some people live happier and healthier at a smaller weight. So you just never know what people are going through, and remember that everyone has different insecurities and everyone has different goals for their bodies or desires for their bodies. And so a comment that maybe wouldn't personally offend you, that doesn't mean that it wouldn't personally offend somebody else. So I think that's something to keep in mind. And also just remembering that society's idea that weight loss is good and weight gain is bad is not always the case. Weight loss can be caused by a number of things. It can be caused by illness, and within that, an eating disorder. That's a type of illness. It can be caused by stress. It can be caused by malnourishment if people aren't able to get the food that they need. And it can be caused by grief. It can be caused by a breakup. It can be caused by all these negative things. And on the other side, weight gain can be caused by good things, by eating disorder recovery, by certain medications that are helping someone's body function better, by maybe someone who just needed to gain a little bit more weight so they can be more fertile, so they can have a child. You know, like there are sometimes there's negative weight gain and sometimes there is positive weight loss, but there's also the flip side of that. So I think we need to remember that just because the messaging in our society tells us that being smaller is better and being bigger is something that you don't want, that doesn't mean that it's the case, and you don't need to succumb to that. And yeah, so just remember that there are so many things that could be going on, and you never ever know what that person is going through. And there's the idea of like, okay, even if you're making a positive comment on people's bodies, it's a gray area because I feel like for me, when I was thinking eating disorder recovery, when people would make comments about my body in like a positive way, which again, that's a prime example of people would comment all the time telling me, oh my gosh, you look so good. What are you doing? What workouts are you doing? And it's like, okay, I was literally in the worst place mentally. I was over exercising. I was under eating. My hair was falling out. I was cold all the time. I had all these horrible effects going on in me, but people would just comment and say like, oh, you look so good, asking me what I did, how I lost the weight, blah, 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 blah. And that in itself continues the cycle of your eating disorder brain, but at the same time, you're also waiting for the day that you don't get that validation. I remember when I would hear the comments or hear people say things, I was like, oh my gosh, if I gain this weight back, I'm going to lose all this validation. So even though I was getting positive feedback on the goals I was trying to set for myself, which were not good goals, but that's what I was trying to do. So it was positive in my head, but at the same time, I was just waiting for the day that those comments stopped. And so scared of the day when those comments would stop, because then I would know that in my eyes, that I had failed. And so that anxiety is another layer that I think a lot of us struggle with. It's like, okay, you get told this one positive thing your whole life, and then one day it stops. It's like, okay, you know that used to be there. So that it's that whole idea of, I don't know. I hope that all made sense, but it's just like, if somebody gets used to the validation of having their body commented on, the second that validation goes away, their confidence goes away. So even if it's positive, it can definitely have negative impacts. And it's also like, if you're commenting on someone's weight loss, it's also just upholding our beliefs that society has about our bodies. Like saying it in that tone of like, oh my gosh, you've lost weight, you look so good. It's like a positive thing. That's just upholding this belief that it's good to lose weight, and it's not always good to lose weight. So even if you think it's a positive comment, it's probably either going to get taken the wrong way. Like on the other side of it, there's the whole discussion about like, if somebody gains healthy weight and they look good, it's like, you look so healthy. Like now that even has a negative connotation. Or online, I've heard creators talking about people commenting and saying like, you're so brave for posting this. Like, you're so brave for posting in a bikini if it's someone in a larger body. And it's like, okay, that's a positive thing, but it's also so backhanded, and it's so like, it's still going with those societal norms of like, why is someone brave for posting a picture in their bikini? If a tiny person posted a picture in their bikini, no one would comment that they were brave. Like, that's just not the type of feedback they'd get. So it's hard because there's connotations to the things that people say, especially online. And so again, even if it's a positive thing, even if someone does look healthier, if they gained weight and they look healthier, saying, oh, you look healthy in terms of their body, if they're coming back from an eating disorder recovery, that is the last thing they want to hear, right? Like, it's just uncomfortable to be perceived. It's uncomfortable to know that someone is like looking at your body and thinking about how it's changing. And yeah, I don't know. It's just a kind of damaging, weird comparison cycle. And the next note I wrote down is that comparison is the thief of joy. Like, I think just comparing someone to a past version of themselves, or comparing them to you, or saying like, oh, you look so good, I wish I looked like that. All of that comparison is just a bad vibe. Like, I don't know how else to explain it. Those are the words that came to my head. It's like, oh, what a weird vibe of the conversation to be like comparing and again, whether it's comparing you to the person who you're talking to, or if it's comparing the person that you're talking to a past version of themselves, comparison is just the thief of joy. And that's a common thing that people say, but it's so true. It's like when you compare yourself against other people or past versions of yourself, you're always going to find ways that you are failing or that you are not doing a good job. And that's just not fun. And so why comment on someone's body and maybe bring up all of those emotions for them? And also with comparing, there are two kind of sides, like two opposites that I want to talk about. Is the first thing, or it's kind of similar to how I was saying, like, weight loss is not always good and weight gain is not always bad. Also, there's like complimenting may make things worse, and shaming will also never help. Like, both things are bad. If you're complimenting someone's body, it could be a compliment. Like, don't get me wrong, I think there is probably a time and no, I'm gonna just stick with my thesis. There's not a time and a place to comment on someone's body. There's not. Like, there are so many other more interesting things to talk about. It's just none of your business. Like, if someone says something about their own body, like, oh, I've been wanting to gain weight for this reason and I feel like I've reached my goals and I'm so proud of myself, you can say, I'm so proud of you for reaching your goals. That conversation is fine, but an unsolicited conversation about somebody else's body is just so weird to me. Like, when you really think about it, it's so weird because it's genuinely none of your business. The only person whose business it is the person who is in that body. They're the only one who knows everything that's going on. They're the only ones that know what weight will make them feel healthy, how their body changes are affecting them, all of those things. So there's I believe there is no time to comment on someone's body. But I also wrote down the notes that shaming will also never help. I think that this is hopefully dying down a little bit, but if someone, I don't even know if it's dying down, but I think that the people who need to hear this are probably not listening to my podcast, but I'll say it anyway, just in case I can even get to one person. Shaming someone's body will literally never help. There are studies that are done. I think I talked about it in my like fighting fat shaming episode a few episodes back, but shaming literally makes things worse because it decreases someone's mental health, quality of mental health, and then that can exacerbate things that make their bodies change in a negative way. And so if you're shaming someone on their body and you're like, no, but I want them to be healthier, first of all, it's not your business. And second of all, shaming is never going to be the way to do it. But also, I don't think complimenting someone for changing their body is the way to do it either. And I my notes for this one, I just wrote down like all of my stream of consciousness thoughts. So if it's a little all over the place, I'm sorry, I'm rambling a little bit, but I also wanted to write down some out-of-pocket things that people have said to me about my body or about other people's bodies that I've heard. At my job, I mean, I work in fitness, like the discussion around bodies is kind of insane, but there are two things that have really stuck out to me since I've started working here. The first one is I was taking a class with like some of the regulars that I usually teach, and one of my regulars, I was in a group of like a bunch of just people, and one of my regulars made some joke about like, oh, Christine's the biggest one in the group. And I, to this day, don't know if he was joking or not, because I'm definitely, like, I wasn't the biggest one in the group, but I also definitely wasn't the smallest one in the group. So that was a little wacky, because I was like, he said it in front of everyone, and I mean, me struggling with the things I've struggled with, it was like so shocking for someone to comment on my body openly like that and in that way. And he was saying it in a joking way. I wish I had all the I don't want to give all the context because I don't want to like give anything away because it happened at work, but it's like it was trying to come off as a joke, but it was also like just a weird thing to say, and no one really thought it was funny. Like, it wasn't, it was obviously trying to be a joke, but he didn't say it in a funny way. So everyone was kind of just like, what? Like, why did you say that? It was just weird. And I thought about that for so long because I was like, oh my gosh, now they're all going to think I'm this and that. And like, it just made me spiral. And that was one of the things that inspired this episode is I was like, why is he making any comment on my body? Even if it's a joke. even if it's a joke, you don't mean anything by it, even if it's positive, if it's negative, obviously, it's never conducive to someone feeling good about themselves in the long run. So there was that. And then another thing is there's a person who I work with who had a big weight loss journey a few years ago. And it's so crazy because everyone who I hear talk about this person, that's the first thing they say about them. And like, this person is an amazing person who I have become good friends with, and I think like is a great asset to our team. I think that they are doing so many other things in their life. They have all these goals they're trying to set. Like there's so many layers to them, and the first thing anybody says about them is that, oh my gosh, they had a huge weight loss journey a few years ago. Who cares? Who cares? Seriously, like I don't understand why anyone cares about that and why that's the first thing they say. It's a little wacky. And then, I mean, another out of pocket thing that people have said was just like when I was in my eating disorder, my family would tell me that I looked so good. Like certain members of my family, they'd be like, oh my gosh, what are you doing? Until I got like too sick, until I was really small and they got concerned. But then at that point, like them being concerned about me felt the same as them saying I looked good, because that was my goal, was to get as small as possible. And so that was pretty damaging also, of just being like told that you look good, told that you look good, and then at some point it turns that like, oh, never mind, I'm actually worried about you. But at that point you're too far gone, because like I was saying before, like I was just scared for the day that no one was going to comment on my body, and that day has come. No one says anything about my body, which is good. Like I think it's great that no one says it, but when I first started gaining weight back in eating disorder recovery, when I would go home and like there was no comments about my body, I was like, oh my gosh, they've gone away and everybody can tell, everyone's perceiving my body. So that was pretty damaging. Just like, that's just a personal anecdote about being told something that people thought was a compliment, but it really made it hard for me later. Another thing is, I was just thinking about how when I was in my eating disorder journey, so many people would comment like publicly on my Instagram and be like, you look so good, you look so skinny, like all these things. And that would kind of embarrass me too, because I was like, wow, I've never gotten these comments before. Like no one was thinking that a couple years ago. And same thing, it just makes me compare myself to my past version of myself. And now, again, it's not a comment that I get, which I think is a good thing, but I also think it's because I'm not at that weight anymore, you know? So those are just some personal anecdotes of why I strongly think that any comment on people's bodies is not a good one. And then I also wanted to say, I think it's damaging to talk negatively about your own body. I won't go too far into this because everyone's on their own journeys, and I'm not going to tell anyone how they can talk about themselves. It's up to you. But I just want to put it out there that for yourself, when you talk negatively about your body, constantly putting yourself down is going to damage your mental health. And it could lead into something bigger, even if you think it's innocent. And then for others, you never know who's listening. If it's your friends, if it's your family, if you have kids and your kids are hearing you talk negatively about your body, you just never know who's struggling and who that's going to affect, because it always brings back that comparison aspect. And then to end, I want to just talk about some tips to take away our emphasis on body size in conversations. One thing I try to do is compliment other aspects of people, like their outfit, their smile, their eyes, their laugh, the way that they smell, like if they're wearing a good perfume. Saying something like that, that is kind of a neutral topic, is way, I feel like to me it means way more than this thing that's like, okay, we all think that we should be saying someone looks a certain way, and that's just not like helpful, as I've been saying this whole episode. But yeah, just think about other things you can compliment if you're going to talk about someone's body. Think about other aspects of them that you love and try to shift your compliments that way instead of just not complimenting at all. And then if you are finding yourself commenting on people's bodies, think about if you really care, right? Like we all just think that this is a conversation that's normal and something to talk about, but if you don't really care about someone's body, don't comment on it. You know, like if you say, oh, you look so great, you lost weight. Do you really care if they lost weight? Like, yeah, and if you don't care, don't comment on it. Like, that's so different than commenting on someone's smile if it's making you feel better. You're like, oh my gosh, your smile is infectious, or your perfume smells so good, or oh my gosh, your eyes look so beautiful with that makeup on. Like, things like that are just things that I feel like people care about more. It's something that actually affects you. Not really, because I mean, obviously, if you comment on someone's eyes, like, that doesn't affect you, but it's like actually something that you have noticed in the other person that you want to bring up versus just like this thing that we all think that should be a topic of conversation. And then if you do really care about how their body looks, I just invite you to take a step and look inward and think about why you care so much about other people's bodies or maybe your own body. And then the last tip I have for taking away the emphasis on body size is just find more interesting topics to discuss. I think we've all heard the notion that like our bodies are the least interesting things about us. And let's think about it that other people's bodies are also the least interesting thing about them. So I encourage us all to find topics of conversation that are much more interesting to discuss with people than what bodies look like. And then the last thing I wanted to say is this is from the eating disorder, I think it's called Eating Disorder Recovery Center. Eating Disorder Center. They talk about what you should say if someone does comment on your weight, which I thought they were kind of funny. So I'll just read those off to end. So if someone says, "You look great. Did you lose weight?" You can say, "Oh, I choose not to focus on my weight. There are so many more interesting things about me." You can simply say that. Or this one is funny to me, but it's a good one. So they say, did you lose weight? And you say, "No clue. I don't weigh myself. So how has your family been?" Change the conversation. Make it something more interesting. Deflect it away because there's no reason to keep talking about it. Or you could say, "I feel great, and that's all that really matters to me." Or you can say, "No, I didn't lose weight, but I do look and feel great." Or you can say, "That question makes me uncomfortable. I try not to focus on my weight as a barometer of my worth." So there are just different ways that you can go about responding to that. I know that this can happen like in a family setting, and that's where you can kind of gauge what your relationship to the person saying it is, but it ranges from either kind of making a joke out of it to changing the conversation to really putting down your foot and saying, "Hey, putting your foot down." I was like, why did that sound so weird? Saying, "This makes me uncomfortable. Can we not talk about it?" And then if someone asks if you've gained weight since they've last saw you, you could say, "I'm happy and healthy. Thanks for noticing." You could say, "Oh, is weight something that you focus on?" Turn it back on them. You could say, "No clue. I don't tie my self-worth to a number on the scale. I'm trying not to focus on my weight, so I'd rather you not comment on it." One is if they say, "Have you gained weight?" You say, "Yep," and you give them a big smile. Or, "I don't think that's an appropriate question. My body is not your business." That is something I wish I could say to people, but it's intense. It's a little confrontational. But yeah, I think it's just good to think about ways that you can kind of drive that conversation, change the subject, set boundaries, let them know what you're uncomfortable with. Another thing that I got from the What We Said podcast that I think is so funny is if someone says something that's like offensive, a way to respond is to be like, "Well, that was a crazy thing to say out loud." Like, imagine how dumb you'd feel if you said something like kind of rude and someone said, "Ooh, that was crazy that you said that out loud," or "That was a crazy thing for you to say." It's a good little thing to say if someone's being out of pocket. But suss the situation, think about who you're talking to, come at it with empathy. I know that we all succumb to this, and I'm being a little aggressive because I feel passionately about it, but I also know that we're all going through our own things, and what we say to others is a mirror of how we feel about ourselves. So give empathy if you can to others if they're commenting, but also don't be afraid to stand up for yourself, and don't be afraid to realize that commenting on bodies is weird and you're allowed to feel uncomfortable if it happens to you. And yeah, that was my episode for the day. I hope that you enjoyed. Make sure you tune in on YouTube. You can watch this video or follow the Instagram at Sustainable Soul Pod. And I will talk to you next week. Bye.